on the Trenton Monitor social media. So it was just good to have like that follow through. And I
Absolutely.
loved it. It was just like, we talked about it. We knew they were doing it, but then they followed up by showing the pictures. And I was like,
And
I love
actually,
it.
I want to give a shout out to St. Mary's in Middletown because they had an in person Christmas meal on Christmas Day, I believe.
Okay.
And they had some pictures that came out of that too. I think we had sent one of our photographers over there, and they
Oh.
had it was just so nice to see people enjoying community who might not otherwise have had the opportunity to do so. And
Hmm.
it just made me think, oh, maybe I need to expand my horizons and try participating in something like that. Get something like that going in my parish.
And you know what? I think it's important to notice that it's all year round, right? Like I was talking, there's a food kitchen in Camden called Cathedral Kitchen, not related with the diocese per se, but obviously they're right down the road. We do a lot of work together. And I was talking to one of the coordinators there, and she was saying we get so many volunteers around the holidays, uh, which is fantastic. But in addition, they need so many volunteers and donations during the year too.
I think that's probably true of most of these
Hmm.
organizations where people are thinking about them more so during Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then immediately after, okay, I did my bit.
Right.
You kind of forget that there's still that ongoing need.
Hmm.
So a lot of these social service agencies, I think, are putting out a little bit of a reminder that, the season of need is not really over. It doesn't end.
Not at all. Especially now when it's getting cold again.
Yeah.
Coat drives, gloves. So if anybody's going through their closet lately and you're like, I haven't worn this in 3 years, this could be the time to donate it to one of your local
Absolutely.
churches or ministries or just a local shelter.
Good segue into just a little advance that we did recently in our January issue for the Monitor
Hmm.
on our not just Catholic Schools Week, but also our diocesan youth conference. And there's
Oh,
always a service component of that.
okay.
And this year, I think they are partnering with Jenna's Blessing Bags. It's an organization, I believe it's out of Philadelphia,
Okay.
and started in memory of a young lady, Jenna, who was very service oriented, and in her memory, they're pulling together blessing bags, they call them, just backpacks that are stuffed with things that are particularly things that people need in the cold weather: socks and blankets, hand warmers, and so this is going to be something that the DYC partners with.
Nice.
That's going to be in February. So
Okay.
keep your eyes out on the Trenton Monitor website for updates on that. But I think they're going to do a drive at different parishes that want to participate to collect some of these items.
So they're
So
actually doing backpacks.
yes,
That's
and
cool.
I don't know if I don't remember if that's being provided by the funds that are collected that help fund the DYC,
Yeah.
or if that's going to be part of what's donated by the parishes. But just
Nice.
you know,
Little
still
shout
working.
out to
Yeah,
DYC, by the way. I didn't realize it was coming up already.
it always catches me by surprise.
But
I mean,
if,
it's every February, but
I know it's just
it's
maybe
like
because it's
February's
always
going to be here
soon.
before we know it.
But I always loved that event. What is it? Young people, teenagers, right? And
Yes,
they is now the time to sign up for that.
it is. I think the registration is open. So if you go to our website at trentonmonitor.com and look under, I believe it's news and either schools or youth and young adults, there should be an advance there. Now that I'm saying that, I'm like, I don't know if we actually posted the advance yet. So it'll be coming. So
I want to say I saw something on social media. So if you didn't post the advance, then
it'll at least be on the
yeah,
DOT website.
it's at least on social media saying for us to
It's
sign up.
dotyouth.org.
Cool.
So people can go at least get more information, save the dates. And I think you sign up through your parish. So
Okay.
you'll have to go to your parish youth organization and make sure that the minister has your name and registration. It's 8th grade through 12th grade.
Right. So if you have a young teen in your family, a child, a brother, a sister, a grandchild, it's a day of just amazing faith of young people together. Usually it's a couple hundred.
It's
There's
big.
witness talks, there's music, there's adoration. I think there's
I think there
confession.
usually is. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what they're planning this
Lunch,
year, but yeah, it's a full
full
day.
of energy.
It's fantastic. I got to go last year. It was in Toms River, and I think this year it might be in Red Bank.
Oh, cool.
So
Nice.
yeah, I know what's going on in Diocese of Camden.
A lot is going on in the Diocese of Camden. the Diocese of Camden just recently had a vocations awareness week, so to speak, where not the official one, but some of our seminarians in the Diocese of Camden went around to the diocesan high schools, did some vocations talks.
Nice.
So that was pretty exciting. We have a lot coming up. We have some training coming up for the new OCIA. The switch from the terminology RCIA is switching to OCIA.
Right.
So
is that this year?
The Diocese of Camden is having some special guest speakers in to train people and talk about, just bring everybody up to speed on that. And of course, the Synod. We have some news recently that there's some more questions coming out of the Synod, and
Okay.
the U.S. bishops are asking 2 specific questions. I don't have them written in front of me, but if you check out the latest Talking Catholic podcast plug, we had 2 wonderful guests to talk all about the Synod. If you have any Synod questions, but I know that's every diocese in the U.S. Just kind of a follow up, like 2 extra questions that came out of it. And, it was interesting. I was on a conference call the other day, like a national conference call, and Bishop Flores out of Brownsville, Texas, who's kind of spearheading the Synod on the U.S. side, was talking about the importance of these 2 extra questions coming out. And if anybody took part in the Synod talks and listening sessions, they weren't talks, let me fix that, listening sessions last year, over the last year and a half, you might be wondering, well, why are we getting more questions? And, Bishop Flores was very passionate about talking that this is just building upon that. It's the continuing of a building blocks. Like, anytime you might have a discussion, especially listening, more questions might come out of it because things were raised. So this is not discounting the previous work at all. Matter of fact, quite the opposite. It's fruit, more fruit from the tree. So
And
that be good.
weren't some of the, I think there was a lot of response that through these listening sessions, a lot of people wanted it to continue. Like this
Yes.
is, a lot of people were giving the feedback that, if we had these continuing, I would come to them. So that's a perfect opportunity.
And I have to say, there's a few parishes in the Diocese of Camden that have actually continued those listening sessions, like for the last 18 months since that's happened. And now there's one parish. I'm not going to tell you which one because I'm going to be doing an article about it. So if you want to hear more,
Don't want to scoop yourself.
pick up the Catholic Star Herald newspaper or online. That has taken that, and actually what they're doing now is they go door to door evangelizing.
Wow.
Yeah, and that has all come from those listening sessions.
Oh my goodness.
So they continue it. I think they meet every month. I don't know.
So are they going to people who have been registered with the parish or just
No,
any?
I think but
Wow.
like I said, I don't know the whole story yet. So pick up the next Catholic Star.
Yes, I'm curious. I'm going to look forward to
Where
that.
both you and I will know more about this late breaking story. So
Late breaking news.
yeah.
Oh, boy.
So we've talked a lot about what we've been up to and maybe what's coming down the pike. And I think that's a good segue
Absolutely,
about what's
yeah.
coming down the pike, about what we're thinking about talking about today.
So we're looking at a new Jubilee year, which has not happened since 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not even on my radar until you had sent me some information from your chancellor.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, the last time we had one of these was before 9/11. It
Yeah.
was before we still had Pope John Paul. It was really such a different time.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't have fathomed all the things that we have gone through in 25 years.
Yeah. So, we're going to be talking about New Year's on the show, and New Year's resolutions and looking to the year ahead. But Father Jason Rocks, who is the chancellor for the Diocese of Camden, wrote a column in the most recent Catholic Star Herald. For everybody playing along at home, let's see how many times I can mention Talking Catholic or Catholic Star Herald today. But it was just an amazing column that our diocesan chancellor wrote, and it's just about the Jubilee year. We had the Year of Mercy in 2015. That was special one, because they're every 25 years, if I remember correctly, the
Yes.
holy years.
And it was a millennial change.
Right.
So that was, that was the first one you and I experienced, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because
Well-
the other one would have been 1975.
Right.
huh?
No.
Or,
2000.
before 2000
Oh,
would
yeah,
have been.
Yes.
So
We would have
2000
been-
was our first, oh, this is what a Jubilee year is.
Right. Yeah. So 2015, especially our age, we would have been more adults in 2015.
Right.
Well, maybe not you. Definitely me. I'm still listening to New Kids on the Block. I'm still listening to New Kids on the Block. Yeah. So yeah, the 2015, and I think I had just started working in Catholic press. It was like 1 year around the same time, 2015. So, that was really exciting too because I didn't know what that was. When in 2000 I had not yet become Catholic, so I wouldn't have been on my radar.
Right. So this is an opportunity to kind of revisit what is a Jubilee
What
year,
is a Jubilee
what is its
year.
purpose, and I love how Father Rox in his column was saying that it's an opportunity to reflect upon the blessing that God has bestowed while deepening one's confidence in the Lord. And
Yeah.
that resonated with me.
I agree. So one of his points in his column that he wrote for us was that the Pope Francis has called that, so that the Jubilee year is 2025, but Pope Francis has called for 2024 for us to prepare spiritually for the faithful across the world to prepare spiritually in 2024 for 2025. And that's what Father Rox's column a lot is about, and how much it's needed. Because we've gone through a lot of difficult changes over the last years. I mean,
Still are,
and
and
still
we're in the
are,
midst of.
right? I mean, we've been through COVID. We've been through some, especially lately, some very intense conflicts, and there's a lot of doubt and confusion and despair.
Right.
And so, Father Rox's column talks about, like when you're in despair, what can happen is that everything becomes bleak, right? Or that, or suddenly you become, well, there's nothing I can do about it, so why even try? Or the other side of despair, he writes, is presumption that everything will all work out. So in other words, I don't need to do anything either, right? But
Not my responsibility.
right,
Yeah.
somebody else
Out of
will
my
take
hands.
care of it.
Yeah.
But his column goes on to say that between despair and presumption, he writes, is the virtue of hope, and which recognizes that although a certain good is difficult to obtain, it is possible. And I think that's beautiful. And then he goes on to quote some ways that Pope Francis has suggested that we get ready for the Jubilee year. Which, by the way, I don't know if we mentioned the theme is Pilgrims of Hope. Am I right? Yeah, Pilgrims of Hope.
It's so appropriate because when that's not what you find when you're accessing the news or social media. It's all despair-inducing news.
Right.
It's not hope-inducing. And I just noticed like there's less and less reported that's actually positive. And so when we get into that mindset, like he said, it can be so hard to think outside ourselves. We tend to get more self-centered, and I'm just going to deal with my problems because I can't do anything outside. I don't have any. My sphere of influence is so small.
Right.
I don't have the ability to affect change, and that's so not true. That's what the evil one wants us to think.
Right.
But just by the very act of offering that to God and saying, I need intercession. I need help. I'm giving you my faith. You grow that faith. You take that little seed of hope and help me do something with it that can have a positive impact.
I mean, I think that's one reason, Emily, that when we were even asked, so humble still, to have a show on domestic church media, that we had talked about some ideas and the idea of Better Together, because we wanted to bring stories of hope.
Absolutely,
And that's what we wanted to talk about, because, and I've talked to a lot of people who say, oh, that's, what is the word, naive, or it's like, oh, well, that doesn't sell. What sells is death and destruction and blah 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 blah. But when you meet people, people that we already know, obviously, right? But then when you meet people as well, they don't want to talk about the bad news all the time. So I don't think that's naive. I think it's hopeful.
It absolutely is.
Because and what you were saying, when you get, and I think some of this will come out as we keep talking today about New Year's resolutions, the more you become stuck in yourselves, or that's depression or anxiety or loneliness, it's hard to get out of that. To me personally, the ways to get out of that is being with other people, doing something for someone else, just being with somebody else, because it gets you out of your own head.
That isolation is
Right.
just reinforcing that that feeling that there's nothing I can do about this terrible situation that I'm in, or that the world is in, or that the church is in. Therefore, I'm just going to turn inward.
Right.
And when you have other people around, it forces you to turn outward and recognize there are other spheres of activity and lives that are happening around me, and my interacting with those can only bring about the good that we have together in our relationship with God and our lives as believers.
Right. And I think that's one reason that when Father wrote about the Jubilee year, which I was not, I mean, I was tracking the Jubilee year. I'm sure we both were, as especially being Catholic journalists. But I had the idea of preparing for the Jubilee year, as Pope had asked. I had missed that. So it's pretty cool because actually, if you're watching on YouTube, yes, I am picking up my phone for notes. But they have a whole website for the Jubilee year, and I'm telling you right now, I mean, you can go on, you can get these pilgrims passes. So if you're actually going to Rome, and if you do, listen to some of the radio broadcasts or news broadcasts, like they're doing some major construction work in Rome to accommodate all the pilgrims that they're expecting.
Oh my goodness.
Like the city's involved about how to create paths. They're doing a lot of construction, new building. But if you go on there, there's a pretty neat thing. It makes me think about getting out of yourself. You cannot be bored in the Jubilee year if you follow the Jubilee year online or in any way, because like every month starting in January, there's an event to attend online or in person for everything you can possibly imagine. Shout out to January, which will be Jubilee of the World of Communications. So I know what our topic will be about next January 2025.
That's right. Oh, let's mark it now.
Mark it, put it on your calendar. But I mean, there is something for every month and multiple things for every month. So I'm just going to throw out a couple because I thought they were interesting. October, Jubilee of the World of Education. November, Jubilee of Choirs. I'm saying it. February, Jubilee of the Armed Forces.
Oh, nice. And this is during Jubilee 25. There's each month has a different.
It's actually more than like some of them like Jubilee for the 15th. For the February, there's also Jubilee of Artists, Jubilee of Deacons. So like there'll be multiple things celebrated, topics celebrated each month. So prepare now.
Look forward to.
If you find yourself a little bummed, especially at the new year, because like me, you're looking at the mirror and going, I'm not getting any thinner, but then again, I'm not walking or going to the gym. It doesn't happen magically. You know what? Check out the Jubilee schedule. Start preparing yourself, and it's going to be good stuff.
What a good way to mentally reorient and to delve into the possibilities, to delve into the hope, seeking out some of those opportunities to celebrate. It's kind of like seeking out a nice gathering with friends. Maybe at first you're like, oh, I don't really want to get out of the house today. I got to get out of my jammies and make myself presentable. But once you're there, you're usually pretty glad that you made the effort, even if it's just for a little while. So this is like mentally getting out of our pajamas and getting into something spiritual that can really sustain us. So this is great. I love anticipating things sometimes.
Yes, me too. So not to trump Talking Catholic, so I'm sure that Father Rox will be on the podcast to talk more about the Jubilee. So please listen to the Talking Catholic podcast as well from the Diocese of Camden, which airs on Domestic Church Media on Sundays at 11 and Mondays at 4. And so that is my shout out, so that my co-host as well from Talking Catholic does not say Jennifer when I walk in the office later. But I know we want to talk about now, probably slide into New Year's resolutions, but we probably should also take a break.
Sounds like we'll get our notes together.
Get our notes together. Yes, more notes. So we'll be right back with Better Together.
Bishop Robert Barron on the priesthood. For the first 1,000 years, there were married priests within the church. There still are married priests under certain circumstances, so it's not absolutely necessary. However, I'm a supporter of it, and I wouldn't want us to move in the direction of kind of a, hey, optional, some do it, some don't. I get it. And I go back to Paul, and it's Paul's words that are actually in the ordination ritual, about an undivided life, a total gift. I have nothing but the greatest respect for married people. In fact, when I hear the term heroic sanctity, when they talk about saints, I think of parents right away, who give themselves to their kids. But there's something, I think, pure and simple and undivided about the life of celibacy. It's a radical conformity unto the celibate Christ. Why am I celibate? My ultimate answer, because Jesus was, and I'm conformed to him.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
I had a moment of overwhelming peace the other day where I felt God's presence very powerfully. That's something called spiritual consolation. In those moments, God makes it easy for us to have the right perspective on life. The next day was rough. I was hit with some really hard news that turned me upside down. You know what I did? I remembered that moment of peace from the day before, and I chose to dwell in that peace. God doesn't just give us moments of spiritual consolation so we can remember them and long for them. He gives us those moments so we can recall them into the present. In a marriage, that time you fell in love, that's not something for the past. They're sweet memories that we recall throughout marriage that feed the whole marriage. So it is with God. In the hard times, recall the way He's shown you His love in the blessed times. Don't just go to your happy place, go to your God space, and you'll find the right perspective again. This is Chris Stefanik from RealLifeCatholic.com on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Better Together. I'm one of your co-hosts, Emily, along with
Jen.
co-host Jen. And we're talking about our New Year's resolutions, although I really don't like that word because it sounds so, I don't know. I'm afraid to say resolution because then I'm likely to break it.
Yeah. Like the pressure is already, as soon as you say resolution, I'm like, I'm just going to roll back over and put those covers back over my head.
So just in the interest of trying to put a little Catholic spin on it, we're better together because we have the opportunity to visit with folks on the phone or in our parishes, and we're better because of it. But I also was going to say that we're better for all the resources that we have as Catholics now because we have just the element of curiosity can lead you within 30 seconds, like it did me, to some of these options out there for enriching your faith and for starting the new year off on the right foot. And I realize we're a little bit into the new year already, but it's like a soft transition.
Yeah.
And there are some just amazing websites out there talking about some ways to bring your faith to the forefront. I just did a quick search and found on churchpop.com an article by Christina Herrera. It was just released this last week. And she has, I don't know how many, it's like half a dozen different suggestions for, and the top of the list is dedicate time to pray. But she doesn't say, dedicate 3 hours. You don't have to start with something that is unachievable. That's kind of the main point a lot of these suggestions have, is to start with something that you're able to do, even if it's 5 minutes, even if it's, start the morning saying, I offer my day to you. I'm just minimally getting into the habit of making prayer a daily habit.
Right. I've been very vocal on other platforms how much a fan I am of Word on Fire and Bishop Barron, and he also doing some research, knowing we'll be doing resolutions. He has a great 5-minute video, and to go back into that prayer idea, and he says, Bishop Barron says that almost everybody says I don't pray enough, right? So what's the answer?
Yeah, what's enough?
Right, what's enough? And what's the answer? And he says the answer is make the time. Take the time. We can find it. We make time for everything else in our day. We make time to scroll on Facebook for an hour, watch way too many cat videos, that is me, on Instagram. If you can make an hour for that, because that's what it turns into,
Sure.
You can make time to pray. And, and what are some of the ways to pray? Like, I don't know for you, but to me, one of the easiest ways for me to pray is the rosary.
That is my fallback because that's the thing that I know by heart, and I can turn to that. And there was a wonderful priest, and I'm forgetting his name, but he had talked about how you can, as you're saying those prayers over and over, just picture in your mind the person for which you're offering prayers or the intention for
Oh, I like
which,
that.
and just kind of, because you know the prayers by heart, you don't have to concentrate on the prayer as much as the intention,
Right.
but it kind of all rolls together. And, the Blessed Mother can take that and polish it up and bring it before her son. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have
Polish
to
it
be.
up. I love that.
Oh man, I mean, I'm counting on it because my prayer is certainly nowhere close to
Yeah.
what one thinks it should be. It's not contemplative. It's not. My mind is all over the place. So I think just making that effort and getting into the habit, that's the first step.
Right.
And getting into besides the rosary, liturgy of the hours, which I was not super familiar with until a few years ago when it was introduced to the diaconate candidates. My husband's a diaconate candidate, and
Right.
as a deacon, they're required to pray. I believe it's morning and or evening prayer. They have to do some portion of the liturgy of the hours
Yeah.
every day, and a lot of people do it old school with the volumes, the texts. But now there's an app for that, and it makes it so easy because it queues up what you need for that day. You don't have to try to figure out mathematically where you are in the volume for that day of the church year. And I literally put it on while I'm getting ready and listen to it.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And even if I know it's not, I'm not sitting down and paying as much attention, if I'm, that's my next goal is to actually sit with it and be
Okay.
a little bit more tuned in. But at least it's giving me some familiarity with the ancient prayer of the church. And, it's filled with the Psalms and the scripture readings. And it's just, I don't know, it's beautiful.
And the liturgy of the hours is for everyone.
It
I
is.
mean, I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about it until Word on Fire was kind of pushing it out, and you can get it monthly. And because I always thought that it was for like priests and religious and, deacons, like people who serve in the church in that professional capacity. I didn't realize that it's for everybody.
It is. And there's an emphasis on the laity there because it's often lay led.
Right.
If you're part of a group that's praying the Liturgy of the Hours. And I should say there's an app for that. It's called Divine Office. So if you go on your
cool.
device, it just says Divine Office. And I love that I can listen to it as well as if you don't want to listen to it, you can just pray along. They have all the pages and you just swipe through.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back to the ways to pray.
Right.
I know in the video I was mentioning Bishop Barron says, go to Mass, right? That's the central prayer of Catholicism. And then I love what he says. He says, if you go to church only one Sunday, go 2 times. If you go to Mass every Sunday of the month, but you never go during the week, start going during the week. Like you wouldn't go to the gym and only work out 2 times a month and then say, I don't see the results.
Well, that's a really good point.
Right? So why do you go to church once a month and say, I don't see the results? So, and not that it's just about results, but your prayer life is deepening, your relationship.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
you can't build a relationship unless you are spending time with that other person.
Right.
And we are spending time with Jesus. And we're building that rapport and understanding. And the more, when I was in a better habit of going more often during the week, I could tell it made a difference in my life, in my prayer life, in my relationship with Jesus. But it's something that there's no shortcut.
Right.
You do have to actually show up.
Ooh, I like that. Show up.
Sometimes, though, that's didn't even mean to make this point, but just showing up, if you can do that, the Holy Spirit can step in and fill that gap. I found that many cases, especially if I'm coming to Mass or a sacrament or something, and I'm just, I'm just not totally in this. My head is somewhere else. Ask the Holy Spirit to intercede, and they'll take you the rest of the way.
Well, we kind of already started talking about apps and podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
One of the suggestions from the article that Emily was talking about is to listen to a Catholic podcast. So increase your time to pray for a possible New Year's resolution. though I don't know if we're using the term resolution, right? We both were like, we're not sure.
New Year's improvements.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I like that. Listen to a Catholic podcast.
That's right. And we have a treasure trove of local podcasts, including
Talking Catholic,
Talking
out of the Diocese of Camden.
But, hearing from people locally who are, worshiping in your same community, we have wonderful clergy, so many resources on domestic church media, local Catholic media, priests who are offering reflections. I think there was a series that was released for the Eucharistic revival in the Diocese of Trenton. There are several priests who have offered Eucharistic specific homilies.
Oh, nice.
And now I have to go and look and see, where was that? I'm sure it's on the diocesan website or on the diocesan YouTube channel. So I'm
Right.
going to go look that up. But having the opportunity to connect with your diocese and connect with your parish and the people with whom you form that Eucharistic community, I think is.
I agree. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy listening to Word on Fire, the Bible in a year and
my
Catechism in a year with Father Mike Schmitz is huge. I've done a little bit of the Catechism in a year. I have fallen behind, so for me, it would be the Catechism probably in like 5 years.
That's good.
But and there are so many out there that you can find. I mean, Hallow is an app that has all of the people we've already talked about. But I love what you said, because if you don't have the opportunity to ever go to a mass in your local diocese with your bishop, one of the benefits that came out of COVID, I believe, is the fact that so many things are live streamed now, and then those are archived. So, I mean, there have been many a homily that I've heard from our bishop in Camden that I find very inspiring, that I will go back and listen to while I drive, because and it means it means even more, so to speak. I don't know if you want to put it that way, because I can relate with him because he's from our area, and same with the Diocese of Trenton. I live in the Diocese of Trenton. I know that I can listen to Bishop O'Connell and on this radio station,
Right.
and it means a lot. Like, I can put a name to a face, and I could see that person.
And they're such good teachers. We have a blessing of clergy who, the schooling that they have to go to theologically to understand what it is that they're trying to impart. And then to have the gift to be able to take that and communicate it in a way that the rest of us can understand it and apply it. I just think that is truly a divine gift, and we should make use as much as possible of what we have at our fingertips.
And you can go on social media. I mean, excuse me. We've mentioned our two bishops, but in the Archdiocese of Newark, Cardinal Tobin is on social media with little blurbs of inspiration as well. I've seen Bishop Checchio do it out of Metuchen, and Patterson. They have their own podcast as well. And I'm mentioning all the ones in New Jersey right now. Just that's every diocese in New Jersey has in some way their bishop speaking via social media, a podcast, a radio show. So anybody listening to this, check out your own local diocese, no matter what state you're in, because I'm sure the same applies.
Mother Angelica must be doing a dance up in
Oh, I love
at
that.
this point, because her mission was to really get Catholic media to the forefront and get it out there to kind of, interact with the culture and compete with our, for our attention. And I think we've really, as Catholics, kind of taken the bull by the horns and found ways to get out there as much as possible. So I'm really proud of our local community for being a big part of that.
Same here.
Yeah,
Same here.
it's cool.
So another resolution. I'm going to go back to Bishop Barron for a second.
Oh, do.
Bishop Barron recommended, and this one is going to be hard, y'all, forgiving an enemy.
Oh,
So when he said that, I was like, what? I mean, not like what, like that's impossible, but like, wait, how does that play into the spirituality of a resolution? And, he says, everyone has an enemy, whether it's, you might not want to put that term to it, but it could be just someone who annoys you, someone you've fallen out of touch with. And he suggests pick one person and actively forgive that person, and not just internally and be like, all right, no. He it's more about saying it to yourself. It's has to be an action, you know. And Bishop Barron mentions forgiveness in the New Testament is always an action, and I think that's good
Interesting.
advice.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
you know, so don't let someone wander away. He suggests go after them, seek to be reconciled. A call, a visit, a letter, because having an enemy interrupts your prayer life.
That is a good point. And of course, it says that in Scripture. If you have a problem with your brother, go and reconcile with your brother before you come before me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, speaking to, yeah, I can't have a close relationship completely with Jesus if I am feuding with somebody else in my personal life. There's going to be that wall
Yeah.
there.
Holding on to something.
It's interesting that that kind of coincides with another article we have, or a series that we've started in the Monitor called Be Inspired.
Okay.
And we're actually interviewing several people who have inspired us. And one of those is Immaculée Ilibagiza. For those of you who don't know, she was a survivor of the Rwandan genocide in 1994. And she's gone on to be an author of several memoirs and speaking all around the world. She is bringing a message of forgiveness. She actually went to one of the people who had killed family members of hers and actively forgave that person.
Whoa.
And, talk about the grace of the Holy Spirit to be able to do that. That's supernatural. That's not something I think that we can do without the intercession of
Yeah.
the divine.
Yeah. Wow. When will that series start?
Actually started in January. So if you
Okay.
pick up your January issue of the Monitor magazine, it'll be on there. And shortly after that, some of these stories will be online.
For listeners, this episode is called New Year's Resolutions and How to Plug Your Own Products.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of the
Wow.
other things on the list was learn about the saints as a possible New
Yes.
Year's resolution. I love that one, probably because I love to read. And you think you know a lot about the saints, but some of those saint stories are intense,
And they're not all like from cradle to grave, holy.
right?
There are a few of those, but a lot of them are just normal people who had something supernatural take place in their lives, and they responded to it.
Right.
So I love that it's relatable. It's kind of, I'm looking for the right word here, but I never feel like I can attain that level of sainthood personally because I look at all of my mistakes and sins, and there's no way I'm on the path to sainthood. But we all are supposed to be striving for that,
Right.
And they're just these examples that the church has set up for us to look at how this person responded to God's grace in whatever trial or challenge that was presented them, and instead of making this decision, they went another way.
And I like how a lot of them, you mentioned this just now, it's not like since you were born, you were holy. And then, a lot of them come to it later in life.
Yeah.
So I relate with that. I'm like, oh, there's still time, Yep. And so, but I don't know. I find that very relatable. And that goes back into the prayer really, because by learning about the saints, you learn about their prayer lives. A lot of the saints are, I won't say insanely theological. So you can really dive in if you're hungry for knowledge, and even that, like some of it's difficult to read. Like Aquinas is difficult for me to read, St. Augustine. So I take it in small pieces,
Right.
which goes back to how we were saying it doesn't have to be for a whole hour a day, like 5 or 10 minutes. Just take a morsel.
It must need like a little Cliff Notes version
Yeah.
that can kind of, have somebody else who's taken a passage and then interpret it. And I'm sure those resources abound. If you're interested, I want to learn a little bit more about what this saint had to say,
Right.
and then find somebody who's very scholarly and can interpret it and condense it and make it easier.
One of my favorites, I'll be honest, I've had the book a long time and I haven't finished it, is St. Teresa, her writings that came out after she passed away, which I know, or Mother Teresa, which I know that, she wouldn't have wanted, and that is in the book. But the reason I haven't finished it is because it's not an easy book to get through, because you're seeing what she, the internal struggles that she went through. But I find that so human and relatable, that I'm very blessed I feel blessed that those letters were not destroyed and that we can read them.
I mean, to hear that the saints struggled. This
Right.
was not just,
Right.
okay, I'm holy now. I'm just going to lead a holy life and not going to have any challenges. And it's very much the opposite.
Exactly.
So that's an excellent idea for New Year's resolution or improvement. I like the suggestion that, let's see, this was from Christina Herrera's article, to make time for Christ-centered relationships. Because again, going back to the better together, we need that Christian fellowship in our lives to reinforce the path we're on, I think. I mean, we are naturally social creatures, and all of our friendships are important, but to have someone who's on that same path as you, I think just makes that journey more accessible, and you can kind of be a little more accountable to each other.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to go deep on that.
Yeah, do.
I know we have to take a break, though. So we'll take one more break. Everybody prepare yourself for more deepness and more resolutions when we come right back.
Hello, I'm Bishop David O'Connell, the Bishop of the Diocese of Trenton, and this is a Eucharistic moment. Venerable Pope Pius XII wrote, "This practice of adoration is based on strong and solid reasons. For the Eucharist is at once a sacrifice and a sacrament. But it differs from the other sacraments in that it not only produces grace, but contains in a permanent manner the author of grace himself. When therefore the Church bids us to adore Christ hidden behind the Eucharistic veils, and to pray to him for spiritual and temporal favors of which we ever stand in need, she manifests faith in her divine spouse, who is present beneath these veils. She professes her gratitude to him, and she enjoys the intimacy of his friendship."
My family left the church because of a very negative experience with a specific priest, and that took my whole family away from going to church for a long period of time. There were other Catholic churches, and there were great Catholic churches and great priests, but we stopped because of that one specific instance. And in a way, I was cheated out a big part of my journey in my life because we weren't in the church. In life, it seems like we're always enslaved to something, and I think that's basically what our culture is all about right now. Is we are enslaved to power or to greed or to wealth or to lust. But there's a true freedom to not be enslaved, but to attach ourselves to God and to be free. My involvement in the church, my relationship with God is who I am. It's what gives me my identity. Thank God I'm home.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for whatever reason, we invite you to take another look. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org today.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Better Together. I am Jen Morrow, and with
Emily
me,
Italia.
there you go. So we were just talking about New Year's resolutions, and how to make them spiritual. We were talking about more prayer, forgiving an enemy, listening to podcasts, maybe try praying the Liturgy of the Hours. And right before we went to break, Emily had been talking about fellowship and how it makes time for your Christ-centered relationships.
Right, because we need that reinforcement of a journey that we're on.
Right. So that kind of dovetails again into something that Bishop Barron had talked about, is comforting the afflicted, right? And this one I liked. Practice the corporal and spiritual acts of mercy, giving food to the hungry, giving water to the thirsty, sheltering the homeless, visiting the sick, burying your dead, visiting the imprisoned, and clothing the naked. By how important that is, not just because it's, of course, what we're called to do, but also how it helps us get out of our own heads sometimes when we are not feeling our best. And a lot of times when we think about some of the corporal works of mercy, is we think about going to the person on the street, and we all know that we see that every day. But it goes further than that. It can be somebody that who's experiencing loneliness, somebody who is depressed or experiencing anxiety, or somebody who has a lot of fear. And by helping others you also end up helping yourself because you're getting out of your own mind, you're fulfilling what we're asked to do, and whatever the other person has to contribute to you as well. Like you're opening up that door that maybe you're visiting someone who is lonely. Well, that person has gifts to give who's been waiting maybe for that opportunity to give them.
And it's so hard if you've ever experienced a bout of depression or anxiety or any of these times of mental anguish to when you're in that state, it's so hard to get out and to ask for help. And so you as a person who recognizes, oh, I have a friend who's potentially lonely or depressed or, somebody who
Or sick.
somebody who
anything.
is isolated in
Yeah.
some fashion.
Right.
I need to be the one to make that first step, that first gesture. And maybe, hey, can I just come over for 5 minutes and, stay for half an hour if they're open to that. But, making that first attempt at a intercession,
Right.
I guess.
Well, as you said, Christ-centered relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're being the face of Christ to them at that point because they may be in a state where it's very difficult for them to see hope and to see the face of Christ. And so you're going to be that conduit
Right.
for them. So I had a friend who went through a really difficult time several years ago when her husband passed away from ALS. And sometimes it was just, I'm going to come and sit on your couch and listen to you because she needed somebody to just talk through all the ugliness that she was feeling, and all the stages of grief that you go through. It can lead you to some dark places, and to just have somebody who wasn't going to judge the situation, to just listen and, I'm here for you. If you need to cry, it's okay. I'm not going to shy away from that. But just, to reach out, and that seemed to really make a difference just in that little.
That's a good point. I think that sometimes we might not reach out because we don't know what to say. Sometimes we don't need to say anything.
Right.
More than likely, the other person just needs to talk, and all they need is somebody to listen.
One of these priests who had responded to in one of these articles had said his goal was to talk less and listen more. And I think that's just such a great advice for all of us, because looking for the right thing to say is not necessarily going to solve whatever the problem is, but just being available and listening is sometimes such an amazing gift.
I don't know about you, but I don't feel like I ever have the right thing to say. So
No, and that's not often what people are looking for. I
Right.
don't think they're not necessarily looking for advice. They're just looking for somebody to
listen.
be with them. So, along those lines, simple acts. So, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, we're advised to do those during Lent. Fasting from negativity actually was suggested by Knights of Columbus Supreme Knight Patrick Kelly.
That's a good one.
I need to do that.
Yeah, me
like,
too.
all the time.
Like all the time.
Because we're just barraged with negativity in our society, and to just, okay, I'm going to not, if I hear it, that doesn't mean I need to pass it on. That doesn't mean I need to internalize it. I can choose to say, I recognize that this is happening, but I'm going to be a force against that.
Oh, that's good.
You know,
Not easy.
no,
But
definitely
doable.
not. Definitely not.
And I mean, everything that we've talked about today is not easy. Some are easier than others.
Right. There are those first steps that
Right.
everybody can take and just, to try to get into the habit. But then, as you journey, as you, get into the habits of prayer, and I'm saying this as myself, like this is my plan to try to start small and then work up to those things that are more difficult.
Yeah. I think I'm going to try to combine two. They're like all the advice that reads that says don't make a list of like 10 resolutions everybody says, So I think I'm going to try to combine two. I'm going to try to walk more so I get moving. I need those, what are those called? Endorphins or something in my mind.
Yes.
But I want to combine it with a prayer life. Actually, number one is my prayer life because I definitely struggle with that. So I would like to combine the two by either listening to a podcast while I walk, or like we were talking about, listen to your local pastor, your local bishop, or just somebody you like to follow. I feel like if I do that while I walk, the two will combine.
That's a great idea. I mean, there are so many things you can choose to listen to, and you kind of become what you take in.
Right.
And if you're taking in things that are leading you more to a spiritual connection, then in enriching your Catholic faith. I think that's going to have a better impact on the rest of your day than the bad news of the world.
Okay, so we'll check in with each other.
Accountability.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Get an accountability buddy. I'm just thinking this to myself. Let's get accountability. Maybe we'll be each other's accountability
That sounds
buddies.
good.
Okay.
How you doing, Jen?
Yeah. Did you walk today? And I'll be like, did you pray today? How's the liturgy of the hours going?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So everybody, think about grabbing a resolution buddy. And, like Emily said, there's many resources that
My
you can go
goodness.
to find resolutions and more.
Literally, just go to a search engine and type in New Year's resolution Catholic, and you will get thousands of options. And these were some of the ones that came up at the beginning. So we weren't exhaustive. There's way more in here. So definitely do that. Look for yourself.
Good. And if anybody is interested in reading the Father Rocks column that we were speaking about at the very beginning, who is the diocesan chancellor for the Diocese of Camden, I said diocese twice, go to CatholicStarHerald.org and check out a future episode of the Talking Catholic podcast on domestic church media.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So everybody, it's good to be back on the show. And after a Christmas break, though it wasn't that long, but it felt longer than it was, I guess.
Yeah, we're well into 2024 now, so
Right.
Ready to start turning over that new leaf.
So, we pray that everybody that might be listening to the show, consider a New Year's resolution, but just consider 1 or 2, not 10, so that you don't get discouraged. And check out one of these Catholic websites that Emily was mentioning about, or a Catholic app. You can go to our Sunday Visitor, which the Catholic Church partners with a lot now, Catholic News Service, any of the podcasts that we mentioned, Bible in a Year. You have a podcast suggestion?
I love the Word on Fire.
Word on Fire.
I love the Mike Schmitz podcast. I'm kind of all over the place. So
That's a good way to
just
be.
whatever I'm in the mood for that day. But it's
Or ask friends. I feel like when I
That's a
ask
good
other
point,
people, they, before I even have to do the research, they know it.
that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Get one that you haven't heard of before.
Right. So that would be good stuff. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We look forward to talking with you next month on Better Together. Emily Italia, Jen Morrow, and have a blessed month.
Absolutely.